Overtime Season on YouTube did a really cool show this year called Draft House, where Will Anderson Jr., C.J. Stroud, and Bijan Robinson took place in a few events at this house that they were staying at times, but then also they were followed around to the combine, to their pro days, and things like that. And it was really cool for all three of those guys. I thought they really put their best foot forward. But this was Overtime Season at CJ Stroud's pro day, which I want to revisit mostly because you'll recall that after this pro day, it was a foregone conclusion that, of course, the Carolina Panthers were drafting CJ Stroud. And of course, the Texans were schmucks and idiots for winning that last game. And now they weren't going to be able to draft CJ Stroud. And it's amazing how everything changed to when all of a sudden, oh no, of course, the Panthers are going to draft Bryce Young. And of course, now the Texans are idiots and morons for not being able to draft Bryce Young. But this is where it all started, back when everybody knew that the Panthers were going to draft CJ Stroud because they sent 787 people to the pro day.
We have a natural connection, and I don't think we need to force anything. We just want to go out there and just really have fun. You have natural nerves, but I'll just try to go into things as confident as I can and accept those nerves, but I'm not nervous.
By the way, the title for this video, which included Bijan Robinson's performance at the Combine and CJ Stroud's pro day, that the quote was, "I'm so nervous," and then it said CJ Stroud's pro day. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure the "I'm so nervous" quote came from Bijan Robinson's agent before he was going to run his second 40 after he had stumbled on his first. So I've really liked this series. I don't appreciate them making it look like CJ Stroud was wetting his pants at any point during this process.
Going into pro day here, Panthers have traded their way up to the number 1 pick. What does that mean for the quarterbacks? What does that mean for the team?
We know that the Panthers are taking a QB. CJ Stroud is a front runner. Bryce Young is a front runner.
I can't control getting picked. I can only do what I do on the field, do as best I can in the meeting and the interviews. Of course, I want to go to a
Okay, so by the way, the quarterback drills that they do to warm up, I feel bad that was it Dak Prescott? Was it Dak that was making all the that was doing everything on the field and people were making fun of it? I feel like Dak might have led the way into guys feeling comfortable enough doing those in person. I also I'll credit professional athletes for making those Apple AirPod Maxes more acceptable to the masses, because I don't like them. I guess they're incredible, but I usually don't care about how stuff looks. I can't it looks like you've got a couple of iPhones on your ears.
a team that fits me very well, but wherever I go, I know God has a plan for me.
What kind of quarterback do you think the Panthers are looking for?
I think that's the million-dollar question.
If one's like a little bit whatever, worry about it. You go through
Okay, so John Beck, his quarterback's coach, basically just telling him, don't if you have an off throw or something, don't worry about it. David Mulligetta, who was, remember, at this point also one of the big reasons that the Texans would never draft C.J. Stroud, because David Mulligetta was his agent.
process.
It's amazing how many things we were so certain about just several weeks ago.
Obviously, there's going to be tremendous pressure on anybody, including CJ, but the most important thing is going to be just to enjoy the moment.
Can somebody tell me that's not Jackson Smith-Njigba? I don't know why I can't recognize that kid right now. Let me know who he's hugging there.
Don't look too far ahead in the future. Each day get better, and if you feel like you've done everything you're supposed to do in the pre-draft process, when draft day comes, you're going to go exactly where you're supposed to be.
This part here, look at that. I know, look, it reminds me of, read a book about Ben Hogan once, and what they talked about in there was that one of the things about being a pro golfer back then, well, he was an amateur golfer because it was dirty to be a pro, but you'd make money. You'd have to basically it's always been dirty. You'd have to be an amateur golfer because those were the ones that were more respected way back when. But then meanwhile, you'd make all kinds of money hustling people and everything at the tournament, at the courses during the week. But one of the things they said was that there were no ropes at that point, so everybody would be just right in the box and you in the tee box and just within inches of your swing all along the way at these huge tournaments, and that's a psychological screw job. And so I wonder, with all these personnel here, This is where I'd be nervous. I'm not gonna lie to you, with everybody pressed up right behind you like that.
Y'all don't wanna see me when I show up like whoa. I got all my people and they ready.
I'm blessed enough to be able to go out there and show my God-given talent. I feel like it jumped out my hand really well.
What CJ showed today is the same thing he showed all season. His ability to place the ball exactly where he wants, whether you're 5 yards down the field or 50 yards down the field. That's what he was made for.
I also thought, like, I don't know who. This is a good question. I got to ask CJ Stroud at some point. Is like who came up with the term ball placement specialist? Because that when he said that at the combine, that caught people's ear because it's not something that people typically would say or brag about, and it didn't sound like he was bragging. But it's what people are looking for. It's a stroke of genius if you can give yourself a moniker that. It doesn't even matter whether it's true or not, except with CJ Stroud, that was his calling card, was his accuracy and his ball placement, his touch on the ball. Then it grabs, and like all of a sudden, that's how people keep referring to you and think about you. The most famous example I could think of was like Howard Stern when he decided to start calling himself the king of all media, which was complete nonsense. It wasn't like he was the king of all media, like not even close. He was like the most successful radio host and he was doing television and stuff like that. But just by calling himself that, it caught on and it's an easy thing for people to call him and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'll give credit to David Mulligetta or whomever for that. Let's see. Oh, he did the slime there, which I can't. I know Deshaun Watson didn't invent it. I know it's the Atlanta rapper, but I just and then there's this.
I've built a great relationship with those guys in Carolina. Just to meet Mr. Tepper, the Panthers owner, was definitely a blessing. Yeah, it means a lot. I definitely think it shows how much not only that they're interested in me, but I'm interested in them, just to meet them, know them as people, and get to know them better and better as a person. So I think that's really big. But honestly,
so was it Coach? You're saying it was Coach Day that gave him the moniker ball placement specialist? That's smart by Coach Ryan Day.
Everybody was amazing. Everybody's been respectful, so I've actually enjoyed this process.
Great job, Seth. I'm so proud of you. Oh my God. You did amazing.
Is CJ Stroud's mom young looking, or did I just get that much older that all these kids' moms look young? Because she's not. She's like at youngest like 38 or so, which is only 10 years younger than me.
CJ's my baby. Him and my daughter are my best friends. It's really important that he knew that I'm there and I'm the one reassuring, loving face when he finishes his work for the day.
I love my mom.
Okay, this part, I felt bad, man. Like, and I'll be like all these guys, like Will Anderson and Bryce Young, and like Bijan Robinson in that draft house. Like, they go pretty over the top. Not those guys individually, but in the coverage of it, and basically showing these guys with these perfect family situations. And I think I'll credit ESPN for not going over the top in like highlighting the hardships and troubles that some of these kids have had, like they used to. This year they backed off on it. They got a lot of credit. They basically made it sound like every guy was like a war refugee or something, in previous years, to the point where it detracted from the guy's actual hard work and stuff. But with CJ, he had a rough situation growing up.
Oh, man, I hope she doesn't take, because she'll get mad at me sometimes if I say some stuff about, our childhood. But
that part right there where he's like, she'll get mad at him for saying some stuff about his childhood. Because I could see where I think sometimes when people hear things and he's just referencing, his mom being a single mom or it being only her and all that stuff, where maybe she thinks that people make generalizations. Because it's not like I've never heard anything bad about her personally or anything. It's a crappy thing that happened to him growing up.
I think she did an amazing job, so I love you.
I think the most crucial thing for CJ over this next month is going to be balance. Learning how to have me time, learning different steps to mentally make sure that he's strong, keeping a very close relationship with God, and then also being a sponge, learning everything he can learn.
Okay, so that part is cool because that, like, all the reports are that, very much wants to be a sponge, that he's just asking everybody all the time about, Matt Burke said he's coming up to him and grabbing the Texans defensive coordinator to ask questions after he threw a pick one day or had a bad pass one day. And, that jives with what we've heard from him. I maintain too the fact that he is so crisp with his technique and his mechanics and everything else, like in a way that it's not just like that's the natural throwing motion that he has. The speed with which he's picked up the play calling, like by that I mean the actual verbiage. Like it's a big step into a West Coast offense coming from a college offense to just get the play calls out, to spit the play calls out, and to understand like exactly like I think sometimes people hear that a quarterback's struggling with the play calling or the verbiage, and they think that it's some kind of shot at the let me bring something up. They think that it's some kind of shot at a guy's intelligence or something. And I mean, sometimes it can be, but it is really difficult. And the thing is, it's not just the actual play call. Like, okay, let's see, Brown right, F short, 2 jet flanker drive. There's a typical play call from a West Coast offense. It's that you're describing the formation and every route that every receiver is running, but then you also have to visualize and really know without even having to think about it exactly what each of those receivers are going to do based on different coverages you might see. So it's the verbiage and all the meaning that goes behind it that's just a lot more complex in a lot of ways than what most guys have done in college. And like Jeff Matthews is a quarterback out of Cornell, real bright kid. And in the Hard Knocks in Atlanta, they talked about how he was really struggling to make the play calls and get all the verbiage down. Like it's not just being smart, it's taking the reps and the time in your hotel room looking over your playbook and practicing it. Like, so for CJ Stroud to be doing a good job with the verbiage so far, that's just more indication of the fact that the kid's working at it.
I mean, and just be who I think I want to be right away. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But with that coaching staff, I definitely think can help me get to that point where I want to be definitely one of the best in the league, if not the best. Draft's right around the corner. I'm ready for whatever comes next.
Okay, good question here from G Money Tactical. You took my name before I grabbed G Money Tactical. Okay, the Texans sent personnel there, but yeah, Caserio wasn't there and D'Amico wasn't there. And I know, like, I remember Louis Riddick kind of went in on them for that, and a few other people. And I like Louis a lot. I just like Louis. That's a fair take. Like you've got this high pick and you're not sending guys there. I think we've talked to Caserio about this. Casario's feeling is that a lot of the travel time, if I'm phrasing it correctly based on what he told Sean and I, a lot of the time spent traveling and scouting people in the spring, he feels could be better spent basically, I think, just watching more film, seeing everything more from as uniform a perspective, because there's a couple things that happen. Is one that, like, okay, you don't get to see as much and watch as much and do as much analysis if you're traveling to all these pro days. But two, that you tend to have a bias towards people that you've seen in person. So, like, unless you can be at everybody's pro day and do all these things, and I mean, schools like I don't agree with him completely, because I feel like schools like Ohio State and Alabama and a lot of the SEC schools or Big Ten schools, you're going to get a lot of targets there that you want to watch in person, but it can be at the expense of it's a bunch of other defensive ends or offensive linemen or whomever else that aren't at those pro days, because you don't go to the Northwestern pro day, or you don't go to the certainly to the North Dakota State pro day in years when they don't have a first round quarterback. So that's just their philosophy. They're not alone in that philosophy. There are a lot more teams now that are skipping the combine and skipping various things. So that's a very long question to your answer of a few guys, but not the heavy hitters. Let's see. In the same breath, Bryce decision making and how plays my break apart in the NFL. Bryce is more ready for that right now. I feel like I jumped in on something without perhaps When I say Bryce, it means, oh, okay, you guys are having a conversation. The media's views and opinions. Yes. TF20, who I'm getting a sense you're a Ohio State fan, TF20. CJ was like that at Ohio State. He is obsessed with getting better. He also had control of that locker room. He was the leader. I think that's one thing that I've realized and learned about CJ Stroud going back a ways. Because remember, one of you suggested that I watch that pivot podcast with CJ Stroud, and that's when I started to see that. I think there's something about his kind of very serious demeanor and maybe just his delivery and the way that he speaks that some people at first are quick to rush to thinking that he doesn't have a natural charisma or that perhaps he's not personable. And I could see that. Like, I was that way. I was totally that. I'm guilty of that. Which is like a good lesson to learn, because I think that when you start to hear what his teammates say about him, the way he does interact with those guys, it's more of a low key slow burn. And a lot of times, to use Sean Pendergast's test, when I actually want to take a road trip with this guy, sometimes the guys that are most engaging and interesting at first and win the room immediately are the guys that, like, after 3 days, you want to plunge a fork into their neck because you're just sick and tired of them. Let's see. She looks 45 plus. I'm getting old. TF says she's young looking. I don't know, man. I think she's. I noticed that without individualizing it to CJ Stroud's mom, I did notice over these last couple of years, like I'm taken aback by how young a lot of the players' moms are, and I'm having to accept and realize, oh yeah, I'm actually older than those women. Things have changed. Hey, you made it all the way to the end of what was probably a pretty long video, because I tend to go long. Really appreciate you hanging out with me, and I would love if you would like and subscribe. I do a whole lot of NFL content, whole lot of Houston content. I played 10 years in the NFL. Now I do a sports radio show in Houston. So a whole lot of all of that, plus more interviews as we move along. We'll be adding topics. I just started doing YouTube a few months ago, and I'm absolutely loving it. So thank you for the support.